Welcome back to 2022. I don't know how your 2021 ended, but let me tell you, our last week in 2021, we could barely crawl out of that year. We got Omnicron. We went to a business meeting and came back with Omnicron. Not that right matters. It's just another flu. So it's not a big deal. Nobody wants to get the flu. So we got the flu when we went to this business meeting. We spent Christmas and a couple of days in bed, but here we are back. My voice is almost back completely, and we've had it for maybe 5-6 days. But that brought up the topic of what does one do when they have the flu? What can they do for flu prevention? And I really wanted to focus on what I thought were the top 10 most important supplements that you could have, and some herbs are in here too. It's easy to make it a very long talk. Another long talk by Carl. But here we go. I think it's important to know, and I hope that you will take this seriously for the next part of flu season. Okay, here's the lineup. Quercetin, zinc, NAC, glutathione, vitamin D3, K2, magnesium, vitamin C, oral, IV, liposomal, fish oil for lack of a better word, vitamin A, and really not to take it, hemp oil, and elderberry. Could have gone into Chinese herbs, but this is short and sweet. If you have these, you will be profoundly affected. And I just want to say that there are the glutathione and the vitamin C, the liposomal in both of these, and a few others with glutathione have dramatically changed. They were not this way 5 years ago. The technology has really made it so it really gets into the cells, so you can bypass the limitation of the gut and so on and so forth, and clearly has demonstrated heads and shoulders above anything else. That is really helpful. So let's get to it. So quercetin it's been in the news certainly for the last couple of years, but quercetin was never used, even in folk medicine or botanical medicine or indigenous medicine, as a respiratory herb, as an antiviral herb. What it has used for, we've used it for the last couple of decades naturopathically as a anti-inflammatory for the gut, primarily for colitis, and then also for prostatitis. And that's fine. So it's sort of migrated up, and there's a lot of research coming out now that it's what they call a zinc ionophore. And what does that mean? It means it helps zinc get into the cell, and zinc has been well demonstrated to be antiviral. So that's not the new piece. The piece is that quercetin now ushers it right to the virus. Let's get drilling, baby, kind of thing. But here's a little caveat here you have to pay attention to. If you get quercetin, and by the way, ECGC, which is epigallocatechin, which comes from green tea, both of these work equally well as a zinc ionophore. But you have to take it with zinc. You can't just take quercetin and ECGC or have your green tea and then later take your zinc. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to take it at the same time. So think of it as a couplet. Quercetin and zinc are a couplet to make it work. These are some studies that came up. You can see zinc and vitamin C, experimental synergistic therapy for prevention and treatment of SARS-CoV. It talks about the flavonoid and how it's been used to improve glucose. Forgot about that part. In rodents and in humans. There's another COVID application. But the upshot is use it with zinc. It is a zinc ionophore, and it's a general anti-inflammatory. I could have gone in that direction, but that's been sort of discussed previously. So it's an anti-inflammatory with some special properties, clearly. In nature, it's found in onions, apples, black tea, like green tea. Black tea and green tea are the same thing, just how they're roasted or steamed, and red wine and kale. Okay, these are the products that we have used, all of them, and they're all good. I would probably say the one that is most noteworthy is from Thorne, and that's quercetin phytosome. It also is synergistic with glutathione. So it's a great product. Any of these are really good products, and any of these companies are really good companies. Okay, zinc. So zinc you can take as a lozenge, which we didn't this time around. And that's fine, and there's plenty of research of just lozenges alone, and even if you break apart a piece of the lozenge and just sort of keep it in your mouth for a period of time, they've done studies of people who get colds and flus on planes and then gave a group this, and it made a big difference. I'll just read you one, by the way. 100 employees from the Cleveland Clinic, which is a big deal, who developed cold symptoms were randomly assigned to receive, in double-blind fashion, zinc gluconate lozenges containing or placebo. Treatment had begun within 24 hours of onset of symptoms. The patient dissolved 1 lozenge in mouth every 2 hours while awake and for as long as possible, as long as the cold symptoms. The median time until symptoms resolved was significantly shorter by 42%. Round it up and say roughly half the time. So zinc as a mover, as a compressor of time that you're sick, cuts it by half for the most part. And this was one of about 14 studies just to make it black and white. 2 products I pulled up. Here's one, Designs for Health, great company. And they gave a little larger context. This is the one that we use this time down. And why I used it because I like B2 with B6. And this is glycinate and then taurine and malic acid. But primarily it was for the B2, B6, and the glycinate. Over here, this is Seeking Help. They're also zinc biglycinate. So they pretty much had the same thing. I just like the context of the 2B vitamins given my genomic predisposition. Okay, NAC glutathione. This has been one substance that has been made much more effective by changing it both as a liposomal, which liposomal means that it's made into a mycel and gets sucked right into the cells, and you don't have this digestive problem. So ordinarily with N-acetylcysteine, which we'll talk about in a second, that you can only take a little bit. One, it's hard to absorb. And if you really try to push the NAC, it's going to hurt you're going to feel it's tremendous stomach burn. I've tried it a number of times and you get tremendous heartburn. But anyway, so glutathione, within the last 5 years, if not the last 3, have a liposomal forms. Many companies carry this, and S-acetyl formulation. So I've taken both, and that is dramatic. It is absolutely dramatic, and I'll tell you about a testimony in just a second. So I can't say enough, glutathione, liposomal, and glutathione S-acetyl formulations are incredible. So liposomal, this is a company here that is actually focused on detox. I don't mean just detox, using the word, hey, everybody have a detox. They're heavy metal clearing and so on and so forth. And their products are spectacular. So this is the one we actually have, liposomal glutathione complex. I would perhaps not take it if I had the flu only, because this also has milk thistle, silymarin, and it has a few other B complex with it, really to support the liver in a detoxification context, as opposed to only liposomal glutathione. This is what I've had, and it's remarkable. And I'll show you what else we've taken. Antioxidant glutathione. Glutathione helps safeguard your cells. You know that. Effects of toxin, helping to neutralize and remove them. The problem about getting sick is that you then start to deplete your glutathione. So that's part of the aspect. So if you can come in, and not just NAC, NAC serves a other purpose, but if you can up your glutathione, you will just usher that virus out the door faster than you will believe possible. I kid you not. So also unsurpassed absorption, that's what liposomal is. Common glutathione, B vitamins, and milk thistle, that's their particular formulation. That's not every formulation. Liposomal delivery it floods the body with nutrients, especially glutathione is the point. And they are very precise. This company came out about 10, 15 years ago, I don't even think that long ago, and really have claimed the liposomal market for glutathione and for vitamin C. You'll see in a second. Okay, this was on oral supplementation with liposomal glutathione. Elevates the body stores of glutathione, makers of immune function. That's a big deal. This was just verifying in 2017, not that long ago, and it wasn't by the company. It was, I don't know if it was European, there you go. European Journal of Nutrition, Clinical Nutrition. So it's a big deal. I would definitely bank on this one for you all. Have it in, with liposomal products, you have to keep them in the refrigerator so they don't get oxidized. Testimony of liposomal glutathione. This was from, I took it off of YouTube, because I talked about glutathione a number of times. And it says, thank you, Dr. Goldkamp. I've been sticking to a pretty good whole foods diet. I started supplementing with liposomal glutathione, and wow, it has made a difference. I have 250 milligrams with coffee in the morning. I no longer feel the effects of adrenal fatigue. Instead, I have great energy all day long and a clear, focused mind. I can even have wine with dinner and no longer get rosacea breakouts. That's the whole redness for, if you know, people who get the red nose when they drink wine. Would this have an effect on methylation capacity, et cetera, et cetera? So I got back to that. So that's a great testimony. So here's the products that are in Wellevate, and they're all good companies. You've seen this one. I've mentioned this before. Seeking Health, we use their genome analysis for some of our clients. That's pure encapsulation. That's Designs for Health. And notice that's S-acetyl-glutathione, and then liposomal with Designs for Health as well. Amazing. Okay, here's NAC, N-acetylcysteine. I just want to show you, this is all the things that NAC can treat. Why do I use NAC? I use NAC as a mucolytic. It certainly will be my backup for making glutathione, but I already got that covered, right? I use it as a mucolytic to help me dry up whatever mucus that I'm producing. So the limitation is NAC is not well absorbed. If you try to push it, you will get a really sharp, very bitter heartburn. And we use all three of these. So that's why I use NAC as opposed to glutathione. It's kind of a belt and suspenders approach as well. But look at all these things. The glutathione, I talked a lot about glutathione before, but it is just remarkable. You could also say ditto with glutathione. Okay, vitamin D, K2, magnesium. This is a triad in my world. Not often do you find vitamin D together with magnesium, so you have to take that as a separate. So we use, there's magnesium I put down. You can get glycinate, bisglycinate, or glycinate malate. So I've used all of these. I kind of rotate them. I don't get stuck in any one thing. But vitamin D3 and K2 are often together. And that's these products over here. You have, once again, Thorne, Seeking Health, and there's a number of good companies there. But the reason I list more than one, because they're often out. So you need a backup. You need to really have a working list of at least 3 things. Like if that's not there, where you're going to go. It's problematic enough to order. So here's vitamin D. Look at all the things of vitamin D. This is solid documentation, research on. It's like overdone because it's been around for a while, of course. Okay, so vitamin C, oral, IV, and liposomal. So vitamin C has been shown to inactivate influenza virus from a long time ago. That's right out of the 40s, by the way. I put that one down here. Got this information from Nutritional Science. I've talked about that in past videos. But this top one, that's 1945 into World War II. So that's a big deal. Vitamin C is given 6 or 15 times a day. So you give it throughout the day. Just below the dose that produces diarrhea, otherwise known as bowel tolerance. And so you'll find if you are very sick that you will have a higher bowel tolerance. Perhaps you can go 10 and 20 and 30 grams, something that's unimaginable. I'm not a big vitamin C person, meaning I don't take vitamin C every day. I used to, probably 5 or 10 years ago. I certainly did. I took some when I was down recently with this Omnicron. But I'll show you what I took. Anyway, so it's the amount of vitamin C a patient could take without developing diarrhea increases with disease severity. So if you're really sick, you can take a lot. And some have been recorded to take up to 150 grams a day before they got bowel tolerance, before they hit bowel tolerance. So one thing about vitamin C is we call it a mast cell stabilizer. So what does that mean? Well, you notice when you walk into the perfume section of whatever store, you start to feel that you're reacting to something. That's what releases histamines. What that really is you're releasing your mast cells, which are part of your white blood cells, neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils. They're releasing all that histamine. That histamine is going to make you get both drowsy a little bit, but it's going to make you get congested. And so when you start feeling yourself being congested, outside of a sinus infection, that's a histamine release. So, and it affects your whole body, not just your sinuses. Most people tend to notice it then. But it's also part of chronic fatigue. That's why they're so fatigued all the time. So what is used against this, what is used to stabilize the mast cells and not to be released so at a moment's notice, is a lot of vitamin C for one, but certainly other things people take. That's why they have their steroids, their inhalers, and so on and so forth. They're providing a similar function, but vitamin C doesn't do the steroid aspect. It does the mast cell stabilization. So that's a big deal. Use that in the clinic a lot. So when you think about it, these are all the things that create high histamine, so liberating foods. You have leftovers from fish for some people. Stress certainly does that. Certain medications does it. And on the other side, what dries up, if you will, the histamines is vitamin C. You have others, antihistamines, of course. DAO, that's an enzyme taken before meals. That's a big deal. Especially some people are predisposed genomically to need more of that, by the way. Certain probiotics, lowering stress, of course, avoiding triggers, infections, parasites, low histamine diet. So it's a big deal. So vitamin C in high doses can be a mast cell stabilizer. That is to keep you from releasing so much histamines. So here's the liposomal that we used. And we also had oral vitamin C. So liposomal delivery bypasses the typical absorption constraints in the gut. It is amazing. You'll get a hit of this. So this you have to keep in the refrigerator. After you open it, keep it in the refrigerator. So this with the glutathione, both liposomal or the S-acetylglutathione, is remarkable. Okay, why would I talk about omega-3 fatty acids right now? Well, here you go. These are all the things that omega-3s, fish oils, that's EPA and DHA, address: cardiovascular, dermatological, gastrointestinal, neurological, psychiatric, rheumatological, others, ulcers, so on and so forth. It's a long, long list and very well researched. Notice dyslexia, notice attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, notice cognitive dysfunction, depression, postpartum depression, schizophrenia, on and on it goes. May be useful for presenting. This would be one of those things that you should be thinking. I've talked a lot about the 6-3 ratio and omega-3 index. You really need to be thinking about what fish you're eating, hopefully clean fish, and omega-3. You need it on a day-to-day basis. So if you did this, you would be a far less inflamed person. The degree of, if you exposed Omnicron to 2 people, one that didn't do fatty acids, the omega-3, and somebody did, there'd be night and day. It's a big deal. So it's one of these things you can do ahead of time. Okay, here's the other thing that's a big deal. We talked about, and this is from Artemis Sinopoulos, the doctor I've told you about. I did an interview coming up later. Here's your omega-3. It's just gotten higher in the processed foods. Omega-6, sorry. And our omega-3s have dropped. And so the difference between the omega-6 and omega-3 is hysterically dangerous. And this is where we are right now. So we're really trying to get some focus down here. And this factor right here will make your experience with Omicron or the flu miserable. I guarantee it. Here's another way of saying, I'm not going to go deep into this, but here's omega-3, there's omega-6. Call this a bunch of anti-inflammatories. I don't know if you know this or not, but omega-3s are coming under a whole different new intensity of research just in the last few years. And they're called resolvents. And we'll get into that when I talk to Dr. Stanopoulos. But call this anti-inflammatory, and omega-6, which you get through primarily from processed foods, is pro-inflammatory. And here's a quote that I got off of one of the things I read. The recent discovery of new omega-3 derived metabolites called resolvents and protectins, derived metabolites, and their potential biological effect on the regulation of inflammation have initiated a whole new era, what they call nutritional immunology. Yeah. Well, naturopathic medicine had another word for that, right? Okay, and here's just an example of some of the labs we do on people, but here's that ratio. Look how high that ratio is. These people would be miserable with the flu. Down here, they probably won't have a problem. And I want you to notice this is the ratio, 17-1. Here's their omega-3. What we're looking at is the core of the inflammation is your omega-6 that turns into arachidonic acid, which turns into all those other pro-inflammatory prostaglandins. But they have a lot of problems. Notice that these people with these terrible ratios have all these related, but not about fish oil, all these other issues that are, I won't say they're caused by the omega-6-3 ratio, but certainly are strongly related. So what about vitamin A? Well, everybody asks about vitamin A. Should I take more vitamin A? Well, unless you are deficient in vitamin A, then you should take vitamin A. But the trouble with vitamin A, and everybody thinks about vitamin A, you take too much vitamin A, it becomes immune suppressing. So you will actually shut down your immune system. You'll do the opposite of all those good things. talked about vitamin C and so on and so forth. You will shut it all down. So I would advise against it. So unless you're living in a country that you know has a vitamin A deficiency and your diet is very poor, if you're deficient, definitely it's helpful. However, very few people are deficient in vitamin A in the US and in the Western economies as well. So taking vitamin A beyond covering a deficiency can be immunosuppressive. Got to know that. So the dilemma of taking aspirin. So let's say you're home and you just felt the flu coming on. You felt the achiness coming on. You feel the fever starting to rise. Perhaps you're starting to feel a runny nose, but you start to want to climb in bed. And the first thing people think about is they want some aspirin. That's not a bad thought, but the problem is, and there's articles and articles thinking the aspirin consumption during the first pandemic of about 100 years ago really was the larger culprit. I wouldn't know, but it certainly is an interesting truth. And why would that be? It's because aspirin is an anti-diaphoretic. It will stop you from having a fever. What you want in that first day is to feed your fever. And that's why if you remember, maybe your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents told you, have a slug of brandy. I know when I lived in Norway for a while, my Norwegian mother lived with a family, and I came down with the flu. She came in and gave me 2 shots of brandy and when I was getting down, and so I sweated out. The whole idea was you sweat it out that first night. Have the brandy and have some water too. Don't dehydrate yourself. Have that, and so the alcohol is, in that context, is a diaphoretic. But if you take aspirin, you're doing just the opposite. You can take aspirin later on in the last couple of days, but not when you have a fever that's going to help you get over the virus. I hope you heard that. Anyways, this is the Thorn Hemp Oil Plus. It doesn't have any THC, and they put it together with clove, pepper, hops, and rosemary. It's really good, and you can use it as an anti-stress. One thing about hemp CBD in general, but hemp oil plus in particular, if you have no reason to take it, it's not going to help you. You're not going to get a buzz from it. You're not going to feel fine. You're going to waste your money. But if you have joint pain for whatever reason, or if you feel like you're coming down with the flu, this is what you can take. So that and the shot of the brandy, go for a good night's sleep. Take the water, ginger tea or something like that. It's going to help you sweat. The shots of brandy, have this. Have a good night's sleep, but do not take the aspirin. Okay? Okay, elderberry. Elderberry, boy. This is so important. We, at former locations, we just moved into this house less than a year ago. We had a number of elderberry plants, and we would make elderberry mead. Elderberry mead was amazing. You can make it out of fresh berries. You can make it out of fresh berries that have been frozen and thawed out, and you can make it out of dried berries. So I really love this plant, and so does most of the world. The blossoms, so if you were to cut those blossoms, which means you're not going to get the berries, and dry them, they are also a diaphoretic. They will help make you sweat. So there's a purpose in the blossoms by itself. The berries, fresh or whatnot, yes, so they're nutritional, of course, but that's not really why you would eat those berries. You would have that. You can either make your own elderberry liqueur, if that's what you want to do, or you can go buy it. But to know that it is special, and there's a product out there called Sambucol. It's been around for about 30 years. It's an Israeli product. It's now well copied in every country. But this is a mix of liposomal vitamin C and elderberry. I love it. It is extremely helpful. And again, you open this and you have to keep it in the refrigerator afterwards. But Gaia puts out a number, Herb Farm, and Gaia's from North Carolina. And it's just an amazing plant, absolutely amazing plants. We're actually buying 10 plants to put in at both sides of our property to grow berries and primarily to make mead. And we have big carboys of meads. It's better than wine. Love it. Okay, that's the end. I hope you take some of this to heart, and I hope you put this together. That should be your first aid flu kit. But put the liposomal ones, once they're opened, in the refrigerator. Till next time. Bye-bye. Hi, Dr. Goldkamp here. I just want to say, if learning about supplements, appropriate use of supplements for a particular situation, like we just talked about using the flu, for the flu, let me recommend this particular video here on NAC and glutathione. They obviously have overlapping function, but they're distinctly unique as well. And it's remarkable how many different situations they are appropriate for. I find it very exciting, and I hope you do too. Take care.